Morning everybody, Steve, Spicehead-Media, or Captain Richard Williams, as I'm really called. So, something a little bit different today. I'm going to tell you a story called Skegy Dell Soll. Now, Skegy Dell Soll is a comedy of errors about two young boys who leave their home in Blackpool and set off on a trans-Pennine journey across the country from the bright lights of Blackpool to the dull lights of Skegness. This epic journey was their masterpiece of idea to head east and seek fame and fortune. They were never recognised for their feat, nor did they make any money, but they did learn lessons for life that had never been taught in the classroom.
Hi everybody, it's Autistic Bobby!
And I'm Fat Steve. And I'm the star of the show, Princess Sandra. And together we're Spicehead-Media. So, peep 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 peep, peep 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 peep, peep 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 peep, went my Apollo 11 alarm clock. Slowly and surely I opened my eyes and sat up and switched it off. Well, today's the day, I thought. It was just nearly 5 a.m. It was daylight. It was the long, hot summer of 1976. So slowly I arose and collected my thoughts. I'd soon be off on a journey with my friend, a cross-country journey, full of danger, full of fun, full of excitement. So I gathered my clothes together, got dressed, and slowly and surely I crept downstairs. As I turned the key in the back door, it clanged and echoed, and I paused for a moment, hoping it wouldn't wake up my mum, my dad, or my governess Nellie. A few seconds, nope. I opened the back door, crept out into the backyard, made the short journey across the yard to the garage. Opened Dad's garage. There was his Rolls Royce, all glistening, tucked up. I recovered my carefully prepared survival kit, rucksack, bag, checked it, 2 tins of beans, 4 OXO cubes. OXO are important in this video, you'll see later. A loaf of bread, several other tins of different things, including a tin of corned beef. So that was all in check. Little Calagas stove, everything. I had everything I needed. So it was time to set off. I come out the garage onto Montpelier Avenue in Bispham, just on the promenade by Leyburn Avenue tram stop it used to be. So it was early, but the sun was already up and it was already getting quite warm. So I set off heading south to Knoll Avenue to meet my friend Howard. So as I walked slowly heading towards Bispham, I got to Bispham tram stop and the amusements on the left, and I was wondering, like, would they have noticed yet that I've gone? I don't know. Dad would probably be asleep or ready to get up to go to work any minute. Nellie might be up making a cup of tea. Perhaps if they noticed I was gone, they could ring the police. It could be the army. They could have search teams out, sniffer dogs, helicopters. No, I don't think I'd been missed yet. So I headed down the prom towards the Castle Casino. Now that's called the Genting Casino now. And just around there I turned left onto Knoll Avenue and headed down to my friend's house. I crept around the back and looked up at his window. Darkness. So I rummaged around and found a little pebble and threw it up to the window. Tink. Waited a few moments. Nothing happened. A slightly bigger, like, piece of gravel. Dink. Nothing. So I wandered looking for something a little bit bigger, and all I could find was sort of an eighth of a house brick. So I threw that just a little bit too hard, and the window smashed. So it was only a few seconds, and Harry was there, peering out of his hole. He opened it and leaned out and looked down and said, "Thanks, Steve, I've got air conditioning now." We both started to snigger with laughter, being careful not to wake up his mum and dad. So, a few minutes later, Howard comes down. Howard's 6'6", huge, great army boots, full combat gear, top to bottom, including beret, combat rucksack, and a couple of other bags. So out he comes into the back garden. I stand and stare at him, and I think, Jesus Christ, what a tower of a young man. He was massive. "What have you got?" he says. I said, "I've got beans, Calagas stove, I've got a sleeping bag." He says, "I've got a sleeping bag. Have you any money?" I said, "Yeah, I've got about £4.50. He said, "Oh," he says, "I've got about 15 quid. I said, "That's good." He says, "And I've got a secret weapon that we can pawn if anything goes wrong." So, after a little chit chat, we decide to set off. We head down Knoll Avenue to the promenade and turn left, heading towards Blackpool, where we'd come to, as I said, the Castle Casino, the Cliffs Hotel, I think, the Savoy Hotel, and then we get to Ginn Square. So the early morning traffic's not too bad as we head up Dixon Road. And just on the right at that bottom end, near here, where I am in the studio now, is just across the road. There used to be a very well-known transport cafe, a sort of greasy spoon. And it had a picture about that big, which was a sketch of the front of the shop on Dixon Road. It was quite nice and quite liked and quite remembered by a lot of people. If anybody today knows where that sketch ended up, I'd love to have a copy of it or a photograph of it. So we get there and it's not quite open, and we're both a bit hungry. So next door but one, there's a pie shop. So I say to Harry, "I've got an idea. Now, this could be where my life of crime came from, and being such a accomplished fraudster and con man, I'm not sure." But I headed in there. It was probably near 6 a.m. So I opened the door, it tinged. Lady come out, she said, "We're not quite open yet." I said, "All right, thank you." I said, I've not really come to buy anything. What it is, last night at home, just before I went to bed, I went into my dad's study, and he had all this paperwork on the desk. And as I looked through it, there was some information, and your address was written down. And I thought, and this lady says, well, why would it have our address? I said, well, my father's a health inspector. And looking at what he was looking at, it looks like he's planning to come and do a surprise inspection on you this morning. So the woman's mouth opened. She said, I'll not be a minute. She headed off into the back. A few minutes later, she came back with this man in these white pinnies and like a chef's hat, covered in flour from head to toe and dough on his hands. And he said, tell me carefully exactly what you saw. I said, well, he had this paperwork, and it had health inspection, and your address was there. I said, you're the baker's on Dixon Road. And he said, oh. I said, and he said, when's this check supposed to happen? I said, sometime today, I think. Right, he says. Just wait there a moment. So off he goes in the back, and I look out the window, and the lady looks and sees Howard, and he comes back with a big cardboard box. And he puts the box down on the counter, and there's like a glass front, and there's vanilla slices and other cakes and cold pork pie. So he's reaching in, grabbing these cakes and putting them in this box. So I'm just going to go, and he says, just hang on there a minute. And he comes round the front, and he said, here you are. Thank you very, very much for tipping us off. I said, you won't get me in trouble with my dad, will you? He said, no, don't worry. He said, so there's a little gift for you and your friend. I didn't really need any. There you go. Thank you very much. So off we went. As I was going out, I was sort of winking at Howie, and we set off up the hill, up towards the co-op, which was then a bank, and Derby Road, where there was Derby Baths. So we sat on a wall, and I think I had a warm pork pie. Beautiful. Just come out of the oven. I think Howie had a steak and kidney, I'm not sure. But we carried on up and decided, as the sun was coming up quite strong, we turned right into Derby Road and walked down a little bit to sit with Derby Baths behind us, to the south, to try and shade us. Now we sat on this wall. Now this wall has more or less gone now. It was part of the structure of the baths. It had a little gully behind it, and next to that on the end was a sunken substation. Now if you go to the co-op on Whalley Road, which I said in 76 was a bank, you'll see just behind that, heading down towards the prom, you'll see this substation still there today, 2026. So we sat on there, and I said there's a sort of gully behind us going down to some underneath the baths. So I decided to have a cake. So I'm munching at this cake, and we're laughing and giggling and chatting, and suddenly we hear this, which today when we're filming in town we call it the crackhead growl. And then it comes again. I can smell pies. So I look at Howie, and we lean over this wall, and in the gully there's this sort of tramp thing, and it comes up the steps, and I can smell pie. Can I have one of your pies? I'm homeless, and I'm starving. I've not eaten or anything. So I looked at him and looked at Howie. I said, "Look, I'm sorry, we've just bought these. These are for our breakfast and lunch and dinner. And, oh, please, mate, I'm starving, please." And then Howie sort of looks at me and kicks me. So I look down in the gully, and I saw the strangest thing. Remember, this is some homeless tramp living in a gully at the side of Derby Baths, but I could see 6 cans of lager, not opened. Now, what sort of a tramp has 6 cans of lager at 6 o'clock in the morning? And how could he go all night without drinking them? So Harry says, "I'll tell you what," he says, "give us 2 of them cans and we'll give you a couple of pies." So he pauses and looks at his beer and looks in the box, and yeah, done. So he goes and gets the cans of lager, brings them up. So we're both 16, we don't drink. I'd had a drink when I was 14 at a party, got very drunk, fell off a tram, hit the concrete railings that they had then, ended up in hospital, and a few days later walked in my house in my underpants, not knowing where I'd been or what had happened. Anyway, we have these cans of lager. We give him 2 meat and potato pies, and he scurries off down his little gully, and we drink this lager, and we're getting merrier and merrier and merrier. So we wash the pies down. I think we have a couple of cakes, and the bag's a bit smaller now, and the box is a bit smaller. So we head down to the promenade, turn left, and make our way into town. We get to the North Pier. We turn up Talbot Road, past the Catholic Church, and we come to the bus station. Now you've got Bickerstaff Square today with Bickerstaff House, which is the social services and council's flagship building. Opposite that is the Holiday Inn, and to the right is a big gymnasium. Now, back in 1976, this gymnasium was open plan below. There was huge, big sections all the way around, and it was the main bus station. So buses would come in from behind, roll up in different areas, and then set off. No health and safety, no pavement. It was just a gamble on whether you made it to the bus or not. There were open buses at the back, quite different to today. And in the corner of that bus station was a little newsagent's and a little cafe. And Howie says, "I'm a bit peckish." I said, "What, still?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "What do you want?" He says, I'm gonna make a policy decision and spend some money." I said, "All right." So we go in this cafe and sit down. Howie says, "Can we have 2 coffees, please, and 2 full English breakfasts?" So the man's writing down. He says, "But I want 6 pieces of bacon." So I look at him. I look at the guy. I said, "No, wait a minute. If you're having 6 pieces of bacon, I want 8 pieces of bacon." Howie says, "Then I want 10 pieces of bacon." So this goes on to about dozens, and the guy's like arguing that how are you going to pay for it, how he gives him the money. So we sit there, and I think we had probably 10 or 12 slices of bacon each, 2 sausage, some black pudding. I don't think there were hash browns in them days. A few slices of bread and butter. We had quite a feast. And Howie said, "Right, I'm going to make a policy decision now, not just on eating, but on transport." I said, what are we going to do, mate? Are we going to get a taxi? Remember, this is a 5 or 6 day plan to try and get to Skegness. And the plan was to try and get to Manchester that first night, and then a bit further over and a bit further, and eventually get to Skegness. So he says, policy decision. We're going to get the bus to the end of the M55 on Preston New Road. Well, the M55 had just been built in 1971, I think it was finished. So we get on this bus and it drives us out, and we get to the end of the M55 and start thumbing. So it's probably 10, 11 o'clock by now. The sun is high and massive, burning in the sky as we stand there like this, like a pair of lemons, till past lunchtime. Nothing. Very little traffic. Not a lot of people knew it were there. And we're just at the point of giving in. There's no shade. So we're in the grass, and the grass is all short because everything's all just been planted and made nice. And suddenly this huge coach comes whooshing up. Psh, doors open. Psh, Howard jumps up. He's there at the door talking to the driver. Leaves me with the bags. Howard shouts to me, come on, this guy is going to give us a lift to Manchester. I said, oh, right. So I get my bags, I've got his bags and everything. I get to the door, he's already sat down. He's sat at the front of the coach like that. So I start throwing the bags in. The driver says, come on, me old duck, hurry up. I'm in like a broad Yorkshire accent. And I get on, and he's off. He's off like a Formula 1 driver. Down the slip road, the M55, racing on, and I'm like, whoa. I said, right, Howie. I said, I'm going to go and sit on that back seat there, and I'm going to go and try and get a kip. Howie says, fine, no problem. So we'd put all the bags on, seats behind us. I walked down to the back of the coach, it was swaying along a bit. Sat down, felt tired, dizzy, strange. It had been a busy morning for a growing 16-year-old. So I lied down, closed my eyes, and within seconds I fell into a deep, restless sleep.
Hi everybody, it's Arteta Bobby!
And I'm Fat Steve. And I'm the star of the show, Princess Sandra. And together we're Spicehead-Media.